Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here today. Happy New Year to all of you. And I'm so glad to see so many people registering and attending this webinar. Hopefully, when you walk away from this webinar, you'll get a sense of how Matrix can help you achieve all these goals that you wanted to accomplish in 2025. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to let you know that this webinar is recorded, and so I'll share the recording with everyone afterwards. And then also, if you have any questions whatsoever during the webinar, please share them in the chat. I'd be happy to address those questions after my demo and presentation. Okay, my name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. My goals today was to walk you through the software, but let's start with why Matrix. I think there's three main reasons why customers come to Matrix. If you feel overwhelmed with personal tasks, meetings, and emails, if you don't know what your team priorities are, and then if you feel like your organization could always be more aligned and that not everyone is always on the same page and know what's important and urgent. My goals, one, help you understand the basics of Matrix. Now, I understand that, actually there's a number of folks in here that are actually very familiar with Matrix already. So I'll try my best to balance between the basics of Matrix, but also actually just strategies to use Matrix to meet your goals. So hopefully you'll get a sense of both. And so for those who are new to Matrix, you'll get a sense of what's possible as well once you actually get really familiar with the product. And then in particular for today's webinar, I want to help you use Matrix to manage your goals, how to start from the top level goals and then breaking it down further and further until you actually meet those goals that you wanted to accomplish over the next 12 months. And then turning those goals into projects, turning those projects into tasks, turning those tasks into action items, ensuring that you get reminders and events and so forth, so then you can focus on your task, and then understanding how much effort you spend on all of those. And then I also want to highlight the features that will give you the most benefits. I always look at Matrix as a software that gives you so many features, so many capabilities, but at the end of the day, you can choose what features actually adds the most value. It's ironic in some cases. I've talked to customers where, we have so many features, but at the end of the day, they use like 3 or 4 features, and that's enough to be valuable for their entire team. And then lastly, how to track New Year resolution. I think one of the things I've seen over and over again is that, we are all very ambitious and we get excited at the beginning of the year to creating all these different resolutions and goals and so forth. How do we ensure that we actually accomplish them, right? How do we ensure that they stay top of mind over the next few months? So Matrix is a software that is comprehensive in letting you prioritize emails, projects, and tasks. At the individual level, we help you prioritize your task and emails, making sure that you don't drop your most important emails. You know exactly what you need to work on. At the team level, we help you actually stay aligned on key projects. One of the things I think is extremely valuable about Matrix is that it helps you and your teammates be on the same page without having to be in the same room, without having to have a meeting, and without having to actually have discussions to know what it is that you guys are all working on. So giving you that alignment in real time is extremely valuable. And then as you use Matrix more, I think you'll find that Matrix create what's called a single source of truth, a place where everyone can go to know exactly what has been done, what needs to be done, and then also be able to go and understand your coworkers' decisions, the priorities they've made, especially when you're changing team members, when you have new people on projects, onboarding them, and so forth. So it's really, really fascinating, how all of this comes from a simple method called the Eisenhower Matrix. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." Now, what I really think is important about this quote is that it helps us understand the context of our work, right? So let's do this exercise. Imagine if I ask you to write down the 15 things you have to do. Okay, so take out a piece of paper and write down the 15 things you have to do. So my next question is, if you were to choose one thing to work on, which one do you choose? Do you get it from the top of the list or the bottom of the list? If it's from the top of the list, that was your first thing in, so first thing out. But if you choose from the bottom of the list, then it's the last thing in, first thing out. So, but how about something in the middle? Do you randomly choose a task? So instead of having a list, imagine if you take those 15 tasks and you ask a simple question. Is this task important and is it urgent? And so instead of actually just having one long list, we actually break them down into these 4 distinct buckets. The things that are important and urgent, we call them high priority. The things that are important but not urgent, those are the medium priority. The things that are urgent but not important, they're actually low priority. And then finally, you have uncategorized for everything else. So if you have tasks that are not important and not urgent, you shouldn't have them, right, at all. And so instead, when you take all these 15 things, you look at these 4 buckets, and then you start them all 15 on the bottom right, and then you move them into the various buckets. Now, it's a very, very simple exercise, but it's so fascinating when it comes to teamwork. And let me explain why. Let's just say you guys are working on a project. You and your coworker, your manager, your direct reports, you have a particular initiative that you're working on this year in 2025. And you have a series of tasks. You have 20 tasks that you're supposed to do for that project. Now you take those 20 tasks, each one of you go and prioritize those tasks into these different buckets. Now, one challenge I have for you is you can't have 100% of the things in quadrant 1. That wouldn't work, right? So in general, imagine if you prioritize and say, you know what? These are our biggest bang for the buck. These are the 25% of the tasks that are most important, and therefore they goes in quadrant 1, and then the 25% goes in quadrant 2. So I would like you to do that exercise on something that's important. Now you go to your coworkers, your managers, your direct reports, your clients, whoever they may be, and ask them to do the same thing. And then you compare notes. And that is the true power of Protomatrix, which is when you do that exercise, you're going to find discrepancies, right? Now, vast majority of the time, for the most important things, you're perfectly aligned. But once in a while, you find that actually something you thought was high priority turns out to not be high priority for your manager, or something that you thought was high priority is somehow not a priority for your direct reports. And so by actually using Protomatrix in this very simple framework around the Eisenhower Matrix and making sure that everyone put their priorities down in one central place and then having a conversation around that is so powerful because it forces you to surface up all of those disagreements from day one. I think one of the biggest challenges or one of the biggest time waster all of us face is actually working on the wrong things. How often has it been where you go and you spend so much time and effort working on something and it turns out it wasn't important, nor was it urgent, right? And so hopefully when you think about Protomatrix, this is what it's all about. It's about creating alignment across the team. And so at the personal level, what it does is it helps you understand how you should be spending your time. And then at the team level, it helps all of you be on the same page. And so when you have that staff meeting and you look at Protomatrix, there shouldn't be any surprises. And then one side note I want to mention about, this whole exercise is that it's not easy. It's not meant to be easy. And so as you use Protomatrix and, you realize I've created this task and I cannot decide if we should go to quadrant 1 or quadrant 2, that means you're using Protomatrix correctly. And so I think some people, when they do that, they get scared or they shy away from trying to make the decision. But this is where I would make the argument that if you're in that situation, that means you could benefit the most from using Protomatrix. Before I walk through the product, I'm going to give you a couple of tips real quick for you to have in the back of your mind as you think about the Protomatrix software. If you're a manager, create a project for your team staff meetings. This is actually very, very straightforward. So, you manage a team of 5, create a project, invite your 5 team members to that project, list down your priorities, and then every time you have a staff meeting, just present the project onto the big screen, or, if you're in the same office, or if it's your remote, just share it on your computer, and then everyone can look at it and focus their time on discussing the things in quadrant 1. One of the reasons this is actually so useful is this. When you have a staff meeting, and people are going through the challenges that they have, we're talking about the things that are blocking them, guess what? It's the last thing in that they tend to talk about. they usually don't end up talking about the most important thing. It's that thing that just happened in the morning. It's that thing that just happened last night, right? You end up bringing those things up. And that's because they're top of mind and they're urgent, but not because they're important. And so that is why having a party matrix that lists the priorities for the team helps you focus on the most critical things to discuss. If you're a, let's just say, operations manager and you're managing multiple sites or locations, then actually create a project for each of those locations and then use our dashboard projects to track all of it. And so, I'll show you some of those high level things today too. But what happens is that when you think about Protomatrix and you think about these quadrants that you create, and the question comes up, how many, when do I create a new quadrants, right? When do I create a new set of quadrants for these things that I have? And the answer really is pretty straightforward. Create a Protomatrix project anytime you have a different set of priorities. So what that means is if you have a manufacturing plant in North Carolina and then the plant in Colorado, well, guess what? They probably have different set of priorities, and therefore you should have two different projects. If you happen to have initiatives that are, specific training programs or things that you're trying to do for the next quarter, create a project for each of those initiatives. If you happen to have, let's just say, an onboarding process. So as an example, you're onboard a customer. So you have an enterprise customer, and every time you onboard the enterprise customer, you have 15 things you have to do. Well, create a project in Protomatrix, turn that into a template, and Protomatrix will automatically create the due dates for you to track the work that you have to do for any of the new enterprise customers that you bring in. So that's a very, very powerful feature. If you're a business owner, create projects for each of your departments. That's very straightforward. And then if you're an individual contributor, create a project for your goals, in order to meet whatever it is that you're trying to do. But then also as a way to, track the work that you have for your promotion requests. We actually have this really cool feature to build out a report of all the things you've done. So imagine you come into your quarterly performance review, you go to Promatrix with just a few clicks, you literally can generate all the work that you've done. And that's a really, really powerful feature. And then also, when you go to do your performance review and you're trying to request promotion and you're trying to prove that you've already gone above and beyond, well, guess what? Protomatrix helps you generate that too. So anyways, these are a couple of thoughts, food for thoughts in the back of your mind, and then we'll walk through the product, and then I'll try to show you how to put some of this into practice. I do want to mention that this webinar, along with all other webinars, are posted on our website at affluence.com/webinars. And so I actually, for those who actually want to review this webinar or learn more basics, I'd strongly recommend that you go here because you can check out the webinar on email management or on using templates and so forth. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the demo of the product and show you how to put this into practice. Okay, here it is. So here you should be able to see my Protomatrix. And here I have a project open, and I'll show you the overall structure. The first, on the left-hand side, these are the list of projects. So you can think of a project as a set of quadrants, right? That every single one of these projects has its own 4 quadrants, and therefore, different types of priorities. So here I have a project called My Personal Priorities. And so I click on this project, and then in the middle is the 4 quadrants. So in Protomatrix, the 4 quadrants is the most important view out of everything. And so for those who are familiar with using time management quadrants or using the Eisenhower Matrix, this is what makes Protomatrix special. This is what makes Protomatrix unique compared to everything else. And again, it's a very simple framework. But as you can see, I have my 4 quadrants. Over every quadrant, I can create a task. So as an example, I'm gonna go ahead and say follow up with webinar participants. Okay, so this is an easy task that I have to do. But here's one thing I can do with Protomatrix. I'm gonna go ahead and say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. And so Protomatrix actually uses what's called natural language to process the text. And so when I press enter, as you can see, and I select this item, on the right-hand side, Protomatrix set the due date for me. So the task is created, and because I say due tomorrow at 2 p.m., it sets a due date tomorrow 2 p.m. my local time. So then when you use Protomatrix, no matter what time zone you're in, it'll set it to your local time. So you could say due in 5 hours, due in 3 days, due tomorrow at 10 a.m., etc. Now, when I select a task, on the right-hand side is the item details. So this is all the information around the task itself. So the most basic information is actually just the task name, and then who's the owner, when it's due, and then down here in the chats, that's a conversation, a history of all these tasks. So when you use Matrix, you can use it for yourself, in which case the chat serves as a record of all the changes that you have. Or if you use in a team environment, the chat serves as a place for you to have a conversation with your teammates so that all of you are on the same page. And so what's really neat about that is that it provides a record of everything that's happening. So this is the very basic level of what Matrix is. So now let's talk about goals for 2025, since this is, what the purpose of this webinar. So let me walk you through the entire process now. So I'm going to go ahead and go to projects. And then when I click on project, I'm going to go ahead and choose create project. So this allows me to start something fresh. And so I'm going to go ahead and call this goals for 2025. And then I'll create the project. I can actually choose a color as well. And so I'll choose that color. I create the project. So now the project is created on, as you can see, that project selected, and then I have my 4 quadrants again. Since this is going to be very important, what happens is on the right-hand side now, I get to see what's called the project details. I'm going to go ahead and star it. And so when I star it, it goes to the top of the list here, or I can even pin it. And so if I pin the project, then it goes to the top of my personal list. And so when you think about Matrix, you might work with a lot of other people. And so when you pin something, it's for yourself. And when you star it, it stars it for the entire team. So just something for you to keep in mind. Now on the right-hand side, again, in my project details, I can actually invite a coworker. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then in this case, I'm going to leave the 4 quadrant names the same. But if I wanted to, I can actually customize these quadrant names. So now I have a project for goals for 2025. So for example, let's just say one of my goals might be, I'll do a medium goal here, read a business book every month, okay? And then I'll go ahead and create another goal, which is launch a new initiative every quarter. So as you can see, one thing that's nice about Matrix is how easy it is to create tasks. And that's one of the things that I want to emphasize. Sometimes when we're brainstorming or when we're working, I don't want you to have to go click on a button to add a task and then, click on a button to set a due date. Instead, in Matrix, you simply type and type and type. And so you can able to track 15 different items, and it takes you, literally 40 seconds to type 15 items as you go down the list. So now, as you can see, I have these two tasks that I have. So check this out. I can go ahead and click on this task, and I'm going to do something that's very unique. I'm going to go and say, remind me monthly. So now what I've just done is that actually I've taken a task, and instead of setting a due date, I'm setting a recurring reminder. And this is actually very, very important. Let me explain why. What happens is that for a vast majority of us in January, right, we get really excited about goals. We have a lot of things we want to do, either becoming more fit or improving ourselves in various ways. But what happens is that after January and then February comes, you start to forget all those goals you set. And it's not because, we do it on purpose, but it's because we have so many things on our plate. You look at your own calendar, look at your calendar for next month, it's going to start filling up, right? And then your calendar in March, that's going to start filling up. And so we don't have time to think about all the goals that we set in January. And so this happens to all of us, and this happens to all the things we want to do, all our ambitious goals and so forth. So my strategy and my trick for you is to set these recurring reminders, not a due date. Because if you set a due date, when that due date comes, you're thinking about it, but the moment that due date passes, you're going to forget about it. So instead, in Matrix, instead of setting a date right here, I choose reminder. And so in this case, remind me monthly. Super useful, because every single month you'll get a reminder from Matrix to actually think and tackle that goal. Same thing here. We'll go ahead and I'm going to say remind me quarterly. But imagine instead, if actually I want to invite my coworker here, so I'm going to go ahead and add my coworker. And so now I've taken this task, I've assigned to a coworker, and since I set a recurring a reminder here, and I'm actually going to go click on reminder, and I'm going to say remind everyone monthly. And so with Matrix, I'm actually also able to set a reminder, not just for myself, but for my entire team or for all the people involved. So as you can see, I've created 2 tasks, I've created reminders. But now let's just say if one of these tasks actually can be broken down further because they're actually a whole project associated with them. Well, check this out. In Matrix, what I'm able to do is click on here and then convert this task to a project. So when I do that, what happens is that Matrix will actually create a whole project from this task. And in fact, I could even use our AI model to generate those subtasks for me. I'm going to go ahead and say no, but when you're playing with Matrix, you can try that and see how it works out. So now you can see how in this particular case, a whole new project has been created, and this project is linked back to my goal project. And so now when I'm in here, I can actually go ahead and create all the subtasks that I need to track for my initial goal projects. So I want to make sure, let me pause for a second. I want to make sure that you understand what I'm saying here. One, in Matrix, you're able to create a project, right? And within those projects, you can have all these goals that you want to achieve. Then you can take any of those goals and convert each of those goals into its own project. And so what that allows you to do is you can think of it as like a fractal. You have your set of priorities, and then you have a set of priorities under each of those priorities. Because even within your most important and urgent project, you might have series of tasks that themselves are also prioritized. So keep that in mind when you use Matrix. And so this allows you to have this nesting that allows you to really find out what it is that you need to work on. So for me personally, what I like to do is I like to have a project that actually tracks all these other projects that I have. So now when I go back to my goals for 2025 project, you can see that actually Matrix will go and convert this icon here into a quadrant, and it'll actually tell you the number of tasks you have in every single quadrant, and then also alerts you when there are items that are overdue. So as you use Matrix more, this dashboard project here is actually very valuable. And in fact, let's just say, you use Matrix across many different levels of management. Your executive leadership team, they may not need to see all the nitty-gritty details, right? Instead, they would go to a project that actually has all of the initiatives that they are responsible for. And then from there, they can see all the tasks. And so when you're managing, depending on what level you're managing, you can actually use Matrix for each of those levels, and Matrix will actually make it all work together. Okay, so that's how you would create projects. That's how you would create goals. And then I want to mention a couple of other things inside a project. One, you can actually, as I mentioned, you can customize each of these quadrant names. So as an example, let's just say high priority, medium priority, low priority makes sense, right? But imagine instead of low priority, you're going to change this to resources or something like that. So if you were tracking work, maybe you actually have a section called resources, and that's where you put documents or links or whatever it is instead. And so as you can see, you can actually customize that. Now, one thing you can do in Matrix is actually build what I call templates. So as an example, let's say you have a employee onboarding process. Okay, so let's just see if I have an example here. You have an employee onboarding process. So I'll go ahead and create a project called employee. Oops, I'll just do a blank project here. Employee onboarding template. Okay, so I'll create a project here called employee onboarding template. And so in this particular case, I now have, again, a project and with the quadrant in it. And so I'm going to go and say task 1, due in 2 weeks. Task 2, due in 3 days. Task 3, due in 5 days. Okay, so imagine I create a series of tasks here in Matrix. And what happens now is actually I can go ahead and go up here and I can save this as a template. And the reason I want to bring this up to you is that when you use Matrix, you're going to find out that there are some things that you want to customize. So for example, some people like certain color schemes. Some people like to change the quadrant names to better reflect how their teammate thinks. And so sometimes people use Matrix not as the Eisenhower Matrix, but for a completely different purpose. And so when you use Matrix and you customize that project, you can, the moment you've customized it to your liking, you go to the top right here and then you save it as a template. So then when you launch a new project, instead of actually launching a project from scratch or launching a project using our template, you can launch using your own template that you've created at your organization. So it's actually a really powerful way to save you time and effort. And then not only that, Matrix will automatically set these due dates for you. So as an example, you see how here I created, a couple of different tasks. As a new employee, maybe you have to do something today, do something in 3 days, do something in 5 days. When you launch a Matrix project from template, you just set the start date, and then Matrix will automatically set all the due dates for you moving forward. So it's really, really helpful because it actually ensures that everyone knows exactly what they need to work on. They know exactly what the due dates are, and then not only that, you don't have to manually create those due dates. So hopefully you'll find that feature useful. Okay, so now I'm going to actually switch gear a little bit and talk about email prioritization. One of the challenges that customers face all the time, at least the customers that come to Matrix, is email prioritization. And so we probably have one of the best email prioritization in the industry. And if you happen to use Outlook, what happens is this: you can select an email, and then on the top right here, click on apps. So you should be able to add apps and add Matrix, and it's called Matrix turn email into task. And so let's just say if I get an email and it's extremely important, what I can do is I can click on this option right here, choose prioritize email. And then when I prioritize an email, the right-hand side, a panel will show up, and this panel allows me to turn this email into a task. And so I'll show you how that looks. So now you can see how it actually captures the information from this email. I can actually choose what project it goes in. And so imagine, I get an email and I have many, many different projects. It's an email from a certain customer or an email related to some initiative. I can actually choose what project it goes in. I can choose what quadrant it goes in. I can even assign this email to another person. So from Outlook itself, I'm able to actually take an email, prioritize it, delegate it, set due date, and then not only that, the email itself is captured and put inside the item. So I'll go ahead and set a due date for 2 weeks from now. I click capture email. So what happens now is on the right-hand side, the item detail shows up. The email itself is captured. It's assigned to my coworker. The due date is set. And so one of the things that, again, that you can do with Matrix is do those recurring reminders, right? So I can go ahead and, remind everyone daily. And so this allows me to prioritize the email and also ensure that my coworker is aware that this email is important, and they're getting the daily reminder in 24 hours here to make sure that they work on this particular email. And then the email itself is actually captured in the resources section. So my coworker can actually open up the task, click on this link right here, and go to the email and respond to that email. So a lot of our customers come to Matrix for this very, very simple feature, able to prioritize that. But here's the thing. Imagine if you get an email and it's related to an existing task. Well, Matrix also lets you go, and instead of actually prioritizing and capturing the email as a new task, you can choose Open Matrix, and now you can attach the email to an existing task. And so this is actually pretty useful because, maybe you have a task for a particular client and you have multiple emails, you have follow-ups and so forth, and they send you new emails. Well, you can take that email and attach it to an existing Matrix task. And so that allows you to actually have everything centralized in one place. And because you can take a task and share it with others and delegate it to your coworkers, guess what? Everyone's on the same page. One example I want to bring up is the following. Imagine if you work and you have a particular customer that you work with, a particular client, right? And then there are multiple team members within your own organization that's responsible for this particular client. And then, this client sends emails to random people. Sometimes I send to you, sometimes I send to other people. So you need one centralized place to track all of that. Well, with Matrix, you can go and you can take those emails, you can attach them all to one central task or one central project, and now everyone can be on the same page. And then not only that, when you have a new person that joins the company, that joins the team, and that new person is supposed to take over the client, guess what? Protomatrix provide you the full record of everything, including all those past emails. And so that allows you to ensure that whoever's new is completely on board and knows the status of everything related to the client. This is so powerful because, if everything remains in people's inboxes, email inboxes, guess what? It's lost forever. And so then not only that, if you have someone that leaves the organization and they have all these emails from the client and that wasn't captured anywhere, guess what? That's completely gone. And so with Protomatrix, you're able to actually have all of those in one central place. So I wanted to highlight, Protomatrix email integration because I think that's pretty useful. Now, if you happen to use Gmail and you don't use Outlook, well, Protomatrix also has a Gmail integration here. So when you open an email, you can go and add Protomatrix for Gmail and turn that email into a task. But Protomatrix also has a really cool feature, which is called the inbox. So I'll show you how that works. When you go back to Protomatrix here, for example, and you go to inbox, every single one of you have something called that's inbox address. And so you can click on this and copy an email address. So when you use Protomatrix or when you use email, save that inbox address as a contact. So for me, I save that contact as something called inbox Protomatrix. So that's what I name it. Now, guess what? Whenever you send an email to that inbox address, it creates a task in Protomatrix. So if you happen to use Gmail, right, instead of actually using the Outlook integration, guess what? You can actually save that contact in Gmail. When you get an email and it's something that's important, you just click forward, you type inbox, and that you can able to send that email into Protomatrix. You can even set due dates and say due tomorrow, and then remind me weekly. And so this allows you to take any email, create a task from it, set a due date, and set a weekly reminder. In fact, I do this on my phone because I use an iPhone and I happen to use Apple Mail. And so Apple Mail obviously doesn't have any apps on it. But what I can do is I see an email that's important. I just forward it into my Protomatrix. I set the due date and I set a reminder directly from the email itself. Really, really useful way to ensure that you capture those emails. The last thing I want to show you in Outlook is the following. You can actually install Protomatrix on the left-hand side here too. So Protomatrix is a universal app in Microsoft. So what that means is that if you use Protomatrix, you can use it in Outlook, you can use it in Office, you can use it in Microsoft Teams. And so that just ensures that Protomatrix is there for you no matter where you are. And so I can't emphasize how useful that is because I can't emphasize enough how useful that is because it's all around context, right? One of the things that people face challenges around is switching applications. Imagine you're in Outlook, then you have to go to Microsoft Teams, then you have to open Excel, and then, in the meantime, you're trying to just know what are the tasks that you have. Well, Protomatrix actually just works in all of those applications that you use already. And so therefore you can pin Protomatrix here in Outlook and you can just click on Protomatrix and access the entire application in Outlook and then click here and go back to emails. And so you can see how easy and seamless that is. The other thing in Outlook too, if you happen to use Outlook for the web app, you can actually install Protomatrix for Chrome and Edge. And actually, it's a really, really neat feature. I'll show you this. So imagine if I get an email, okay? And then in that email, there's a lot of different texts that, maybe some of it relate to something that someone asked me. Guess what? I can just select that text right here, right click, and then click on Protomatrix for Edge, and then save selection to Protomatrix. And that allows me to select any text when I'm on the browser and create a task in Protomatrix immediately from that. So that's really, really powerful. I actually use that quite often because I'm on a web page. In fact, when we use our support system or help desk software is on a web app, and therefore sometimes we actually just want to capture specific action items. So I can just select that text and convert that into a task in Protomatrix, and then I can delegate that to people as needed. And then the other thing I want to show you real quick is actually in Microsoft Teams. So if you happen to use Microsoft Teams, Matrix works completely inside Teams as well. So simply go to apps here and add Matrix, then you pin it on the left-hand side, and now you have access to the entire Matrix application without having to leave Microsoft Teams. One neat feature in Teams is actually our one-on-one. So when you work with other people in Microsoft Teams, you can actually click on this plus here and then choose Matrix and then choose one-on-one view. And so if you are a manager and you have 5, direct reports, guess what? You go and add the one-on-one view for each of your direct reports. And then when you click on the one-on-one view, you can actually see all the tasks you have in common with that person. So instead of having to go to Matrix, select a bunch of different projects, and then find out what tasks your coworkers are working on or your direct reports are working on, Matrix actually brings that to you via the one-on-one view. And so that allows you to see all the tasks that your direct reports are working on. And then you can actually, when you're having that meeting, one-on-one meeting, you can actually add share tasks directly from here. So that allows you to capture the information without having to go to Matrix. And so, we try to surface it up wherever it is that you work within the context of your work. And so not only that, when I'm in a conversation with someone in Teams, I can even pull up Matrix task here and send that inside my conversation with them. Or if I'm having a chat with somebody, I can actually just convert that chat into a Matrix task as well. So this is, again, another way to save you time and making sure that you can capture information into Matrix without having to leave Microsoft Teams, without having to leave the web browser, without having to leave Outlook. So that's a really, really neat feature, especially, when you have a fluid conversation with somebody and, you're coming up with all these ideas that you want to do, guess what? Just click on that text and then convert it into a Matrix task. So I wanted to bring that up. And while you're in Microsoft Teams, one of the things you can do is you can actually add a Matrix chatbot. And when I talk about those reminders and due dates and so forth, guess what? The chatbot is the system that sends you those reminders in Microsoft Teams. And so when we have, let's say go back to that goals, right? You have a goal that you set for next month. You have those recurring reminders. Well, the nice thing is every single month you'll get a ping from Matrix that says, by the way, please remember to, do whatever it is that you said you were going to do. And so that allows Matrix to that allows those important tasks that you have to stay top of mind. That's the number one way to make sure that you achieve whatever it is you want to achieve, to make sure that those important tasks are top of mind. And so I strongly, strongly recommend using the recurring reminders. I think to me, that's my favorite feature in Matrix. And so when I have tasks, for example, I have to follow up with a customer, I would set a due date. I would say, due in 1 week or due in 1 month. And then I would say, remind me monthly. And so when the due date comes and I miss it, it's not a big deal. Matrix will go and send me that reminder to ensure that I get that task done. And then when I'm finally done with it, then it goes away. So that's really, really neat. Now let's go back to Matrix real quick. I'm going to show you a couple of other things. When we talk about Matrix, of course, I showed you the quadrants as the main view. But guess what? Matrix actually has a bunch of other ways for you to work. And so I'll show you an example here. So when I select a particular project, let's say I have these tasks here, right? The quadrants is actually the main view, but I can also go to the list view. The list view allows me to see all the tasks that I have here, and then I can sort them just like an Excel sheet. One neat thing that I can do here is the following. Go to multiple selection, select all items, and generate an email report. Check that out. So what I've just done is I'm in a particular project in Matrix. Let's just say, this project is related to doing some tasks for your executive, right? And then your executive say, hey, by the way, what are the things that, you have to do for me? Or what else is left on our plate? Guess what? You just go to Matrix, use the multi-selector, generate an email, and now you're able to generate an email report that you can send to somebody else. And so that could be an external person, that could be an internal person, or that could be just for reporting purposes. This is really, really neat as a way to ensure that you can communicate the status of existing tasks to other people. But imagine the question is, by the way, what are the things we finished? Guess what? You can click on this filter option, change this to finished items. And so if this task actually had finished items, you can actually see those finished items. And again, you can select all and generate an email report. So that allows you to generate an email report for unfinished items, for finished items. And then not only that, back in the filter here, you can generate whatever filter that you need to make an email report that suits your needs. So for example, I can say, what are all the unfinished items assigned to a certain person? And then from there, generate an email report. So I think this is really neat for those who actually work with external people or work with people who don't yet use Protomatrix, right? And so even if your coworkers are not yet using Protomatrix, but you are, guess what? This email report system will help ensure that you can communicate to them the status of tasks very, very easily. So that's the list view. You can go to the Kanban view. What's nice about the Kanban view is you're able to see what are the tasks you have to do, what are the tasks that are in progress, and what are the tasks that are done. So when you think about Protomatrix, there are different types of projects. So you might have a project that's called a transient project. A transient project is one that has a start date and an end date, right? So what that means is if you have 50 tasks in there, when you're done with that project, it should go to 0. And so in that particular case, when you go to the Kanban view here, over time, it goes from to do to in progress to done. And when task goes into progress, all you have to do is change this progress bar right here. So for example, as I make progress, you see how I can move into the progress bar. And then when I'm done with it, it goes into the done column. And so this is a really good view for project managers just to track the work that's left to do. That's as simple as that. What have we done? What are the things in progress? And what are the things we still have to do? Very, very simple questions. And Protomatrix gives you a view to address that right away. Then you have the calendar view. All the tasks with due dates would show up on here. And then you have the Gantt chart view, all your tasks that actually spans much longer term horizon. So the calendar, the difference between calendar and Gantt chart is the following. The calendar is very good for seeing tasks that are due today or this week or even this month. But if you have something that spans across multiple months and even years, well, the Gantt chart is there to help you see the plan much, much further out. So as you can see, I'm in the Gantt chart view. All my items in Matrix automatically get converted into the Gantt chart view as long as I have due dates. And so we do this for you automatically. You don't have to go and create a Gantt chart from scratch. It just takes all the tasks you have in Matrix and then automatically gives you a different perspective on that. And then what you can do is you can even save this or download it. So for example, you can save what's called an SVG file, and from there you can paste it into your presentation or send it out to your customers or whatever it is that you have to do from the Gantt chart perspective. And then every time you select a task in Matrix 2, you can actually build dependencies around these Gantt charts, right? Because sometimes a task depends on another task. When you go to the resources section, you can actually link a task, and then you can say that this task is blocked by another task, or blocks, or caused by, or causes. And so the moment you set those dependencies, Matrix will automatically build those Gantt charts for you and set those dependencies for you as well. And then lastly, you have what's called the reports view. So the reports view is actually a way to sum up all the work that you have for that particular project. Now, most of you would not need this feature, but for those who are actually in very, very sophisticated projects that have a lot of details, a lot of stakeholders, the reports view actually give you a sense of everything that's happening across all your coworkers. And so here you can see every single person involved in this project. You can see the number of tasks tag in different states. So essentially what that means is what are the tasks that are, you can actually tag Matrix. So what that means, I'm sorry, you can tag task in Matrix. So what that means is that you can actually take a task and say, this is related to A, or this is related to B, etc. And so Matrix will automatically generate reports for you there. And then not only that, we have these things called burn down. So you can see, over time, whether or not the number of tasks you have are going down and the rate at which they're going down. And then also what the calendar is like over the next coming months. So that's the reports view. But again, the most important view in Matrix is the quadrant view, right? Because it helps you understand what are the things you need to work on at any point in time. But I wanted to show you these other views because they serve very different purposes. And so what's neat about this is that every single one of my projects has its own views, right? So that allows you to see exactly the status of all of your projects. Now on the left-hand side, we have these things called global view. So I showed you a per project view, but I can also go and see the calendar across all of my projects. So this is really powerful because, if I have 15 projects, I have so many tasks on my plate, I can't go and click through every single project to know what I need to work on. Instead, I click on calendar here, I can click on projects and I can select specific project that I want. And then I can even click filter and say, show me the tasks that are assigned to me, right? And so now that allows me to see the calendar just for my task, but then I can actually also show the calendar for my coworkers. And so if you are a manager, you can go and select your direct reports and see what their calendar is like across all these different projects over the coming weeks or over the coming months. Same thing with the Gantt chart view. You can go to the Gantt chart here, and now this is the global Gantt chart. This is the Gantt chart for everything that you have across all of Protomatrix. And so you can see how this is very, very large, as you can see all the things that's pending. But then again, you can actually click on project and filter by projects. You can click on filters and choose different people and so forth. And then you can even choose what quadrants you want to filter to. And then the other thing you want to see here is what's called the global search view. So this is called the master view. So what I like about this view is that it shows me everything I have in Protomatrix, but then I can also build those cool email reports that I mentioned to you. So let's just say I go to the global view here, and I mentioned to you earlier how you could use Protomatrix to generate the list of things you did last quarter for your performance review. How you do it. You go to the search view. You would go and group by project, okay? And then you would say all the things you finish, and then all the things you finish from essentially, October 1st to December 31st. And then you can say by due dates or by start date, whatever it is that you want to set. And so now what I've just done is I've gone and actually I'm able to go and filter all the tasks that I have finished across a specific timeline. And then check this out. I just select these tasks and I can build an email report. And then from here, I can copy this and paste it into, whatever performance portal that you use. Or I can actually also, instead of actually emailing it, I can export it to CSV. So Protomatrix has a really, really powerful CSV import and export feature that allows you to actually convert CSV into Protomatrix and then also take your Protomatrix and export them out as CSV. So depending on how you want to use it. But here's one thing. Imagine the following, which is when you create these tasks and you're tracking it, you want to add your effort. So imagine you go to effort here and you say that this task took you an hour, right? And then this task took you 35 minutes. And then this task is maybe, a week's worth of work. You can also manually override it by saying set effort to 3 days, okay? So Protomatrix allows you to actually override your own, override these various buttons. Now, when you export this task, you get the following. You get an Excel document that looks something like this, and Protomatrix will actually show the total amount of effort that you have, and then you can just open it up in Excel and then sum up the effort. So this is a way to track the amount of hours that you've worked on the various projects, the amount of hours you've worked on various tasks, and then you, again, combining with Protomatrix filter system, you can do whatever you want, right? So it's really, really powerful. And then not only that, Protomatrix lets you build templates around every single one of your projects in Excel. So that allows you to export a project and then from there, modify it and then import it back into Protomatrix. So I want to show you that because I think it's actually really neat for those people who, are at the sort of intersection between Excel and Protomatrix. Some people are very, very proficient at that. And so that Protomatrix allows you to work in both worlds together. Okay. And then lastly, you can also run the one-on-one view in Protomatrix as well. So I wanted to bring that up because I think that is a very useful way to select a person and then see all the tasks you have in common with them. So you can think of the one-on-one as a people-centric way to see the task, and then be able to click on add share task here and be able to create tasks really, really quickly. Now, the last thing I want to show you is what's called the home view. And in fact, this might be, one of the most important views because this is where you start your day. So when you go to Protomatrix and you log in, what happens is you're typically taken to the home view, and the home view has a couple of things. The first is called the alerts. These are items that require your attention. So when people assign you tasks, it'll show up here and it'll say assign. Or when people mention you, they'll show up here and it'll say, it has an @ symbol. That means you were mentioned. Or it tells you the tasks where you've set reminders or the tasks that are overdue. So when you start your day, the alerts view gives you a summary of everything that requires you to review. And so every time you click on that task, then this list gets shorter and shorter. And then you can also clear all those notifications right here. But for me, when I start my day, I go to alerts here and I work from the top down. And Protomatrix automatically prioritize those. So the things that are assigned to you, or the things that are explicitly mention you, guess what? It goes to the top of the list. So this ensures that you actually see the tickets that are most useful or most important to you. And then also you can go to what's called the agenda view. So for those who are more individual contributors, right, you just need to know what you need to work on. People may assign you a bunch of tasks, but all you have to do is go to the agenda view and it shows you all the tasks that you have to do today, all the tasks you have to do this week. And then not only that, you can actually change this view here. You can see how I can change this and say all the items that I own or all the items that I follow. The difference is that there's only one owner per task. So remember when I select a task here, this is the owner. But what happens is you can actually add followers. And so followers actually get updates on the status of those tasks, if those tasks get modified or due dates or whatever. Also, when you do that remind everyone, it reminds the owner as well as the follower. So that's what followers are. So when you go to the agenda here, you can just choose, show you all the items that, or show you only the items that you own, or also the items that you follow, okay? And then lastly, if you go to my items here, it's a subset list of all the tasks that you have across all of Protomatrix. And then one thing I want to emphasize is how, we try to make it easy for you to add items from everywhere. That's because, creating tasks should be a very seamless and easy experience. So keep that in mind. Okay, with that, I'm going to wrap things up. Now, let me just summarize what I've just mentioned to you in the structure of Protomatrix and how I recommend that you get started. Remember, create a project for your goals for 2025, list your various priorities, make sure that you invite your team members so they're on the same page. For every single one of those initiatives, you can go up here and then create a project from that. Now you can prioritize all those tasks within those high priority projects. And then when you have the various different projects and you create the task in them, make sure you set those due dates, make sure you set those recurring reminders. And then if you use Microsoft Teams and Outlook, make sure you add Protomatrix to Teams, make sure you add Protomatrix to Outlook. And then, you can also authorize Microsoft Teams to send you reminders about Protomatrix as well. So that's my general recommendation. And then as you use Protomatrix more, use our other views here. For example, the list view, the Kanban view, the calendar view, the Gantt chart view. And then from there, make sure you use the email reporting feature. You send those email reports to your coworkers, email reports to your clients, etc. All right, I'm going to go back to my presentation here real quick. So if you do nothing else, sign up for Protomatrix and use our apps and Teams and Outlook if applicable. We also have a desktop app. I didn't show you, but Protomatrix also works on Mac as well as Windows. So that allows you to actually get access to Protomatrix without having to go to the web app. And so what's nice about that is that when you get notifications, it sends you the notifications inside the desktop app. So check that out. I actually think that, the most successful users in Protomatrix are those that actually, keep Protomatrix top of mind. And so if you have the desktop app, you're much, much more likely to be successful at Protomatrix because it's right there for you. And then make sure you create a project that highlight your top priorities. Make sure that you set up those due dates and reminders, and then ask your coworkers to do the same. Each of your coworkers should have their own matrix that track their goals, their priorities, and then set 1 hour every day, or I'm sorry, every week to reprioritize, right? Because our priorities are always changing, and that's okay. The point of Matrix is to go and have the status of the latest priorities right now. And so when someone goes to your party matrix, they should be able to see your priorities. And when you go to your coworkers' party matrix, you're able to see their priorities. And then the last thing, which I think is the most important in a team environment, is that when you use party matrix in a team environment, and you have a meeting, just bring up Matrix, share the screen, and then talk through your priorities and make sure that you focus on the things that are important and urgent. And if something doesn't belong, then take it out. And if something belongs in important and urgent, but it's not, then move it in, right? And if you do that, I guarantee that you'll find Matrix to be tremendously helpful in ensuring that you work on the right things. What success in Protomatrix should look like on a personal level, you should check Protomatrix every week to remind yourself of your goals. You just have one central place to track all your priorities. And then at the team level, everyone understands and are aligned on key tasks. Again, it's taking it out of your brain, putting into something that's tangible and shared across your team. And then if you happens to get a lot of emails that needs prioritization, then make sure you use our Outlook integrations or our Gmail integrations or the email forwarding to prioritize those emails. And then lastly, at the team level, you're able to see everyone's priorities in real time asynchronously. What that means is you don't have to have a meeting to know what the priorities are, right? You could be in different time zone, different offices, and it doesn't matter. Okay, that's all I have. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. I'm going to go ahead and check the chat right now. But also, since there are a lot of you that will also be watching this afterwards, feel free to send me an email if you have any questions, okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the chat here. But again, if you have any questions, go ahead and send them in the chat here. So the webinar, I'll send you the recording usually by tomorrow, but also you can always go to affluence.com/webinars to see the latest recordings and also all the previous recordings. The question around, would you use Protomatrix to roll out company-wide OKRs? I think it really depends on, if you have a dedicated OKR system, then, maybe you can use that instead. But I think what's helpful about Protomatrix is you can use it to generate a project of priorities for every single one. So imagine, if you have for every person, they have their own OKR projects, right? And then you can roll it up in some ways by creating those dashboard projects to make sure that, you have one central place to see everyone's priorities and then everyone's objectives and so forth. So that's totally up to you. I think that adapting it depends on how large your organization is, and adapting it depends on how much effort you want to put in. But in my opinion, the power of Protomatrix isn't around all these extra work that you do, but instead you're using Protomatrix to track your tasks, your priorities, and then Protomatrix automatically roll them up and generate reports for you. So I think that's one of the inherent power of Protomatrix that's different from OKR software. I think the challenge of OKR software is, they can tend to be top down, and then there's a huge gap, right? But instead, you can think of Protomatrix as the bottoms up. So, up to you and your organization. Is there a way to move the details pane on the right to below the matrix? That's a great question. Actually, we don't have that option. I can understand that, if you're on vertical monitors, what you can do though in Matrix is the following. I'll show you. You can collapse this. So you see how I can collapse this here? And then not only that, if you are actually scaling this, you can make this a lot smaller and Matrix will automatically resize. So here, I'll show you here. So what happens, you can see now it's actually smaller. And so in a vertical monitor, it would work. But also you can resize the quadrants. So what that means is, you can see, quadrant 1, quadrant 2, or when you're in this view, you can switch to a list view instead, right? So the list view would work better probably in your vertical monitor environments. And so you can see how I can go to list view here. And then if I need to, sort, I can sort by the various quadrants, quadrant 1, quadrant 2, or I can just filter and, decide show me only the tasks related to high priority tasks or medium priority tasks. So that's the strategy I would use around the, tight verticals, tight horizontal space. Do you have a global view to see all tasks across all projects on iPhone and iPad? Yes, actually, it's the same thing. So on the iPhone and iPad, if you use our latest version, it's inherently the same as our desktop version. And so all you have to do is go to the search view. So the search view is the global view. So when you go to the search view, click on the filters here, and then you can build whatever that you need. And in fact, you can even build your own custom filters as well. So once you build a filter, you can actually save that as a custom filter. And so that allows you to, go to the same filters over and over again. Can those tasks added to projects add tasks? Can those added to project add tasks as well? Oh, that's a great question. So when you create a project in Matrix, so I'll go back to here, and then let's just say you have a project here, and then you invite your coworkers, they have full access to the project. That means they can add tasks, they can delete tasks, they can mark tasks as done. Matrix will keep a record of all of that, but yes, whenever someone's in a project, they have complete control. If you don't want them to have control, then what you do instead is you go to the project details and you can share a project in read-only mode. Now, it won't show up in their Matrix, but they'll get a special link where they can see the status of that project, but it's read-only. So typically, this is better for sharing with external parties, but also you can assign a task to someone who's not in the project. And so that would allow them to only see that specific task as opposed to all tasks. And then lastly, if you use Microsoft Teams and you go to a channel, for example, let's just say you have a channel here, you can click this plus, you can choose Matrix, and then what you can do is you can share a project, but you can share the project in read-only mode. So that gives you some permission controls around, whether you want to share the whole project or let them only see the project and not anything else. In terms of mobile device, yeah. So if you use our mobile app now, it's just like our web app experience. In fact, on mobile, I love just going to prioritization.com on my mobile device because it actually allows me to see all the tasks that I have. Now, of course, there's a couple things that is different, which is you don't have as much space for the quadrants. But as I showed you here, when you're in the quadrants view, you can just resize it. So on your mobile device, you can resize it. I really like our mobile app. And then actually on the mobile app, when you tap on a task, it actually takes over the whole screen, right? And so I'd strongly recommend that you try it. And that's the best way to experience Matrix. These are fantastic questions. If there's any more questions that I didn't get a chance to address today, feel free to send an email to hi@affluence.com. So I'll send that email right here. And then also, if you have any questions around anything else, helpdesk@affluence.com. And then again, the webinars themselves are at affluence.com/webinars. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate your time today. Wish you the best for the new year. And hopefully you can use Matrix to manage some of these goals and New Year resolutions that you have. Thank you for your time.